This happened years ago, but the ripples definitely continued for many years. I was an athlete in my 20s. I was fortunate to spend the decade from my 19th birthday until just shy of my 30th birthday playing basketball overseas. I would spend majority of the year overseas, then come back to the States until the new season or possible a new country. It's a very cutthroat career to have, as I knew guys I'd play against have a replacement literally sitting in the stands till after the game and then they would be let go. So I met my wife through my brother. I was flying back to the States. I lived in Texas at that time. He said come to Denver, so I instead flew and was going to visit my brother for a few weeks then head home. At that time, I didn't have a girlfriend or a house and just had a room at my folks. So I'm on a 12-hour flight and land in Denver and my phone starts going nuts with voicemails. This was flip phone era. My brother and his then girlfriend had an emergency with her mom, and they drove to New Mexico, and his friend Andy was going to pick me up and would take me to his place till he got back. Andy was a girl, and I was dumb the minute I laid eyes on her and was blown away. Needless to say, I fell for her. It helped she was tall, and she was very sarcastic and fun to be around. Moving along many years later and getting married and having a kid later, I was in what I thought was the perfect life. We traveled, saw the world, enjoyed spending time together and got along with each other's families. Sex life was great. Never thought anything would come between us. My mother's side of the family all decided to move from California at the same time. They all wanted to leave California and lower their costs of living. So what seemed like overnight, I got grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. My closest cousin is John. He was married to his high school sweetheart. Soon after he arrives, we hang out a bunch. And when I was in town, I tried hanging out as much as time permitted. He liked going to bars and strip clubs. My wife and I would go hang out and have fun. She liked strip clubs and, like I said, we had a great relationship. So in other words, we were solid. And I've always been open. She had all my passwords, and I didn't keep anything from her nor her from me. One night my cell rings. She answered and spends about 45 minutes talking on the phone. My daughter was 3 at the time, and her and I were watching TV. After the phone call, she comes in like the Gestapo, asking if there was anything I needed to tell her. Clueless and flustered, she explains that a girl called my cell asking when I would be over because she was running late, that she didn't know I was married and that I need to do right by her and our soon-to-be child. How much of an asshole I was for cheating on my wife and getting another girl pregnant. Moving along, she is yelling and freaking out. So I tell her to call the girl back and we will sort it out. After about 15 minutes of going back and forth on the phone, I told her to come to the house so I can prove it isn't me. After what felt like an eternity, the girl shows up. As my wife let her in, the girl sees me and just loses it, saying that's not James. What is going on? After a long conversation and a lot of moonshine apple pie, we get the story. So my cousin apparently almost got caught by his wife and decided to ditch his phone, so he had a way of explaining to them why they couldn't get in touch at times. So he ditched his Nokia and said it was stolen and gave this girl I cell, thinking she wouldn't call. Trust me, I too questioned his thinking, but it really happened. He also had been telling her that James was his name, James being my nickname. So after getting everything ironed out, even though I'm happy it was over, my wife explained I had to choose. Either my cousin tells his wife or my wife will. So I have to make this guy-wrenching phone call to tell my cousin what happened. He loses it and just tells me give him some time to tell his wife and to not let my wife break the news first. If you've ever been married, asking something like that isn't an easy conversation no matter how good the marriage is. Fast forward a few months, all seems right in the world. My wife calls me. She was having lunch at my folks with my mom. That girl called my folks' house, looking for James, and my father answered. My father is old-fashioned. He married his high school sweetheart and believes that once you're married, that's it. So him listening to this call and my wife tells him this story about what happened. He then asks the girl to fill him in and then maybe he can help her sort this out. So she spills her guts to my dad, explaining how I was leaving my wife for her and our new baby and that she needed to reach me because the car broke down and needed help. And the fact that his phone wasn't working, she decided to call phone numbers on the bill trying to get in touch with him. Luckily, he had already heard the story and explains that I am not my cousin. My wife wasn't happy that my cousin hadn't taken care of this, so now I'm having to explain to my wife that as far as I knew, that situation was solved and hadn't hurt anything else from it. A few days later, my dad calls me and says that girl showed up with the kid looking for my cousin. During the peaceful time, my folks went on a cruise and asked my cousin to house sit. He had been bringing that girl over to my folks' house and they were playing house the 2 weeks my parents were gone. At this point, my wife lost it with this and brought everything crashing down on my cousin's head. He ended up getting divorced from his wife, eventually from this girl as well. We ironed out our relationship and moved past it. The crazy part is, I decided to retire. I had some issues with my knee and it would require surgery and rehab. Teams usually pay for everything including the rehab, so I decided to have the surgery and then fly home and do rehab locally. Trying to be romantic and surprise my wife instead of letting her know I was flying in on a specific day. Got to the airport, got a taxi and drove home, not wanting to let my wife know, expecting Marshall bliss. Instead, I walk into a master bedroom of some guy asleep next to my wife. Devastated, I went into the closet, grabbed clothes, took pictures on my camera, woke my daughter up, and drove to my folks' house. The aftermath was pretty standard and painful. To this day, she has never told me who he was or ever really explained why. Well, a truthful explanation, that is. Now I'm remarried and things are good. But to this day, I never thought anything like this would happen to me. Like honestly, I try not to dwell on browsing Reddit and see anything bad. It hits at the oddest times.